So January 6th just happened, and the Republicans are having selective amnesia when it comes to what happened on January 6th. Their recounting of what happened, things of this nature. Now, we just saw Vice President Kamala Harris. We just saw her preside over the certification of the election results, of the Electoral College votes. Okay, we just saw that happen on January 6th, and civil rights attorney Charles Coleman was on Eamon Mohadeen's show on January 5th, 2025. Okay. And he did a really good analysis of the GOP's collective amnesia, and I say selective amnesia, on January 6th, 4 years later. I want to go to this clip. I want to show you this here. And then I'm going to show you statements from Vice President Kamala Harris after the certification process took place. Okay, let me cue this up. All right.
The 47th president.
As Democratic Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries addressed lawmakers and members of the 119th Congress on Friday, his acknowledgement of Donald Trump's presidential win had a telling reaction from GOP lawmakers.
2 months ago, the American people elected Donald Trump as the 47th president of the United States of America. Thank you for that very generous applause. It's okay. There are no election deniers on our side of the aisle.
Shout out Brooklyn. Tomorrow, on January 6th, Congress is set to formally certify Trump's win at the U.S. Capitol. And on the same day in the same building where 4 years ago, a mob of insurrectionists attempted to take control and to overturn the election results by force. Now in 2025, physical reminders of that day have largely faded. Inside the Capitol, you won't find scars on the walls from the thousands who converged on January 6th while waving Trump flags. There's no plaque or remembrance of the attack. Instead, we have videos like these, many of them which came from the rioters themselves. We have these images of protesters breaking windows and storming the halls of the Capitol, even trying to take over the House floor as lawmakers and their staff huddled for safety. And we have these chilling sounds, this terrifying chant targeting then Vice President Mike Pence. Multiple people died, both during and after the riot. More than 140 police officers were injured. Condemnations of the attack were swift and came from members of both parties. That night, we heard this from Senator Lindsey Graham, who had been a staunch ally of Trump since he won in 2016.
I hate it to end this way. Oh my God, I hate it. From my point of view, he's been a consequential president. But today, first thing you'll see. All I can say is count me out. Enough is enough.
And then the next day, Trump himself even shared this video to social media.
I would like to begin by addressing the heinous attack on the United States Capitol. The demonstrators who infiltrated the Capitol have defiled the seat of American democracy. To those who engaged in the acts of violence and destruction, you do not represent our country. And to those who broke the law, you will pay.
But soon there were these little and then these big shifts in the narrative around what actually happened on January 6th of the recent trauma everyone in this country had just lived through. Some Republicans started floating the idea that the protesters at the Capitol weren't right-wing or even Trump supporters at all.
Now, there were likely not all Trump supporters, and there are some reports that Antifa sympathizers may have been sprinkled throughout the crowd.
I don't know if the reports are true, but the Washington Times has just reported some pretty compelling evidence from a facial recognition company showing that some of the people who breached the Capitol today were not Trump supporters. They were masquerading as Trump supporters and, in fact, were members of the violent terrorist group Antifa.
And then another theme emerged, downplaying the violence of the insurrection.
It was not an insurrection, and we cannot call it that and be truthful. If you didn't know the TV footage was a video from January the 6th, you would actually think it was a normal tourist visit.
With a straight face, a normal tourist visit. And finally, there was the transformation of the insurrectionists from lawbreakers to patriots and martyrs.
We will treat those people from January 6th fairly.
A bipartisan January 6th Select Committee was assembled to hold public hearings on the events of January 6th. Members presented even more documentation of the violent attack in an effort to ensure accountability and transparency. And Special Counsel Jack Smith was tasked with leading his own investigation of Trump's role in the attack. The Justice Department also took actions against the rioters. The DOJ has since charged more than 1,500 people with crimes stemming from the attack on the Capitol. But here's the thing. Despite the indisputable evidence, despite these detailed investigations and prosecutions, by 2022, an NBC News poll found that less than half of Americans considered Trump solely or mainly responsible for the January 6th attack. The full-throated GOP campaign to rewrite history largely worked. When Trump began campaigning again for a second term, there was a clear talking point repeated over and over again by anyone serious about joining his administration.
On the election of 2020, I've answered this question directly a million times. No. I think there are serious problems in 2020. So did Donald Trump lose the election? Not by the words that I would use.
If you're turning 65 or beyond, you're going
All
to
right,
watch
hold
this.
on.
There are a lot of people today that are Medicare eligible that are enrolling in Advantage plans because of all the advertisements that give the impression that everything else.
It all went back to the big lie. Do you believe?
No. I think there are serious problems in 2020. So did Donald Trump lose the election? Not by the words that I would use.
It all went back to the big lie. Do you believe Donald Trump won the 2020 election or not? That was the barometer for getting into Trump's inner circle. It is a blatant erasure that we cannot stand to forget, as the new administration is just 15 days from taking power. Last month, President-elect Trump promised to pardon rioters in the first hour of his term. These are the same people who were already tried by the DOJ and convicted by the government. And Speaker Mike Johnson said House Republicans will set their sights on the January 6th committee itself for having the nerve, the audacity to investigate an attempted insurrection that happened in front of all of us in plain sight. In a new essay for the New York Times, Aquilino Gonell, a former sergeant in the Capitol Police, said he's still haunted by the events of that day, which pushed him to ultimately leave the force. He wrote, quote, "I resent the ongoing whitewashing of the barbarity and collective amnesia of right-wing politicians who aren't willing to hold Mr. Trump accountable. I can't bear to hear Republicans describe themselves as the law and order party." The hypocrisy here is by design, and it not only undermines the significance of the threats to democracy that were exposed that day, it also erases and minimizes a moment that looms over our entire political system. 4 years later, as Republicans would love for Americans to get on board with their historical rewrite, or at least move on from it, we cannot sit back and allow the continued normalization of the insurrection. Joining me now to discuss this is April Ryan, White House correspondent and Washington bureau chief at The Griot, as well as an MSNBC contributor and the author of Black Women Will Save the World, an Anthem, and Ryan Wiggins, chief of staff for the Lincoln Project. Thank you both for being here to kick off the second hour of Amen. I want to start with you, April. Your response to some comments that President Biden made this afternoon to a reporter talking about the significance of January 6th tomorrow. He said, I think it should not be rewritten. I don't think it should be forgotten, but I don't think we should. If you noticed, I reached out to make sure there's a smooth transition. We got to get back to basic, normal transfer of power.
President Biden is president for the next few days, and he wants a smooth transition. He does not want the remnants of January 6th, the residue of January 6th, 4 years ago, to be a part of his legacy. You have to remember, okay, President Biden is trying to stay above the fray. But for those of us who work in Washington, those of us who were there or reporting on it, remember vividly. And you cannot negate January 6th, because January 6th was, in fact, an effort to keep Donald Trump in office and not let Joe Biden come in. If those persons who were rioting that day had done what they had planned, Charles, I don't even know if we would be in these seats right now. It would look different. It would smell different. It would taste different. This was not a tourist attraction tour, a visit of people with a picnic basket with those red and white checkered tablecloths skipping through the halls of Congress. These were people who had bear spray, who had bats, tens of thousands of people who had backpacks who could not make it through the Secret Service checkpoint because they had things in their bags, okay, when the president was speaking on the ellipse. But they moved on over to Capitol Hill. And President Trump watched it. He told them to ultimately, at the end of the day, to go home. And he even said this defiled democracy the day after. And now the switch. It's so interesting to hear the people who were running to safety, trying to run from these people who were going to do God knows what. People who erected a gallows for Mike Pence, the sitting vice president at the time, because he certified the votes against his own president or a new president. I don't know what more. I just think the president is trying to move on and keep peace. This president, Joe Biden, until January 20th.
Very difficult to manage doing that, but also keeping in mind an accurate depiction of history. And Ryan, speaking of that accurate depiction of history, I want to talk to you about some of the hypocrisy that we're seeing from the GOP. In a moment where you have actual January 6th rioters who have come to the light and said, you know what, I was duped. I was there. This was a mess. You still have Republicans and some lawmakers who are heralding them as heroes and patriots, even against their own narratives. These are folks who were there, who've been convicted and tried, who have said now, you know what, this was wrong and it should not have happened. How do you square that? And there are other narratives as well. Just we saw some of the switch and change in positions of other lawmakers, including Donald Trump. How do Republicans square that in a way that's reconcilable for anyone who's paying attention?
So, Charles, I'll tell you, I'm a Southerner. And Southerners know that football is religion, right? And so I think that you have a lot of these people who are actually looking at their politics like they look at their football team. Well, it doesn't matter if my team cheated this year. It doesn't matter if my team did this, as long as we get to the national championship football game, right? And I think that people have got to stop seeing something as vital as our government and the politics that operate within our government as something as silly as a team that you just can't turn your back on.
All right. So excellent segment from Amen Show with Charles Coleman, civil rights attorney Charles Coleman. Okay, so I want to go to, let's look at this piece here quickly from Axios.com. Congress certifies the election. Congress certifies Trump's 2024 victory 4 years after Capitol riot or insurrection. That's what it really was, an insurrection, attempted insurrection. This is from January 6, 2025. 4 years after President Trump, 4 years after President-elect Trump supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol, Congress on Monday peacefully certified its 2024 victory, with Vice President Kamala Harris overseeing her own loss. The big picture, though the Electoral College certification proceeded peacefully, local law enforcement stepped up security around the U.S. Capitol out of an abundance of caution. Donald Trump has repeatedly said pardoning the January 6, 2021 insurrectionists or rioters is something he will consider on his first day back in the Oval Office. Many prominent Republicans have followed Trump's lead in the 4 years since the attack to downplay the violence of the day, even though most of them were scared for their lives when the insurrectionists were storming the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. Now, Donald Trump and Vice President-elect J.D. Vance, who was present on Monday's certification, won the election with 312 Electoral College votes to Vice President Kamala Harris and Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota's 226 votes. The whole count took roughly 30 minutes. Okay, so read the rest of this piece here, recapping what happened. This is Congress certifies Trump's 2024 victory 4 years after Capitol riot. Now, here's VP Harris talking about, I want to pull up this clip here. Okay, this is VP Harris after the Electoral College vote count certification.
Well, today was obviously a very important day, and it was about what should be the norm and what the American people should be able to take for granted, which is that one of the most important pillars of our democracy is that there will be a peaceful transfer of power. And today I did what I have done my entire career, which is take seriously the oath that I have taken many times to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, which included today performing my constitutional duties to ensure that the people of America, the voters of America, will have their votes counted, that those votes matter, and that they will determine then the outcome of an election. I do believe very strongly that America's democracy is only as strong as our willingness to fight for it. Every single person, their willingness to fight for and respect the importance of our democracy. Otherwise, it is very fragile, and it will not be able to withstand moments of crisis. And today, America's democracy stood.
Okay. All right. So that happened January 6, 2024. Totally different from 2021 when Donald Trump lost and sent his domestic terrorist thugs to the U.S. Capitol to stop the certification process so he can stay in power. Now, News1.com has a good article that deals with a aspect of the January 6, 2021 insurrection that a lot of mainstream media is not talking about. And that is the racial animus, racial bias that was driving a lot of the animosity that caused these people to storm the U.S. Capitol and assault 140 police officers. Now, Republicans are supposed to be the people who love the police and back the blue and all this. As I've said before, they backed the blue until the coup. They backed the blue until the coup. That's what happened. Let me flip over to this piece here. Okay, so this is from news1.com. The racist legacy of January 6th. The racist legacy of January 6th. Yes, Capitol rioters wanted to stop Joe Biden from being president, but the motivation was also largely rooted in anti-black racism. Anti-black racism. This is January 6, 2025. Because you have to remember, on January 5th, 2025, this was updated January 6, 2025. January 5th, 2021, that was a special election in Georgia, and Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff, the two Democrats, beat the two Republicans, and then that gave those two Senate wins gave Democrats control of the Senate. The purpose of the so-called Stop the Steal rally was to prevent Congress from certifying Joe Biden's presidential election based on the big lie that non-existent voter fraud played a role in victories over Donald Trump. Now, keep in mind, there were 62 lawsuits filed on behalf of Trump and his cronies. They filed 62 lawsuits. They lost 61 of the lawsuits. So any evidence they had of a stolen election, they had 61 opportunities to present that evidence. They lost. Okay? They didn't have evidence of a stolen election, all this nonsense that they were saying on Fox News. When it came time to present the evidence in court, they didn't have the evidence. They lied. And Donald Trump raised $250 million in 2 months after the 2021 election. He raised $250 million from his supporters by lying to his supporters, telling them that the election was stolen. When it came time to go to court 62 times and present the evidence, they lost 61 out of 62 times. And the one case that they won was in Philadelphia, and that just dealt with how close to election workers counting the votes could poll watchers be. When it came time to present the evidence of the stolen election, they didn't have any. And even judges that Donald Trump nominated ruled against him. Let's see here. Okay, so they talk about Georgia is largely credited with pushing Biden past the finish line, thanks in no small part to the devoted legion of black organizers who mobilized voters across the state to cast their ballots against Trump, who also blamed black election workers under false pretenses. This was the basis of energizing Trump's base to act on his behalf to avenge his loss in the most disingenuous of ways by blindly parroting the claim that he was cheated out of being reelected with the help of black people. Okay, we know he lied on Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. Trump and his team of MAGA enthusiasts continue to terrorize a pair of former Georgia election workers, Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, and were on the receiving end of a whopping $148 million judgment against former Trump lawyer Rudy Giuliani for his racist defamation campaign. All right, so read the rest of this piece here. So they talk about Harry Dunn, former Capitol Hill police officer Harry Dunn, who's African-American. He testified before Congress that rioters showered him with anti-black racism as he attempted in vain to control the rabid crowd, etc. They called him the N-word, all types of things like this. Read this, The Racist Legacy of January 6th. This is at news1.com. Okay, now a lot of people have seen this video here. So January 3rd, 2025, you have the swearing in of U.S. senators, right? And Deb Fischer, U.S. senator from Nebraska, Republican, of course, she was there with her husband, and he snubbed VP Kamala Harris when she tried to shake his hand. I'm going to show you this. This is from C-SPAN, okay? And this video has gone viral. There's been a lot of talk about it. I know they talked about it on Roland Martin Unfiltered. I saw Reese Colbert, who's also on Roland's show, and you know we interviewed Reese here on the African History Network show. I saw Reese put out a video about it as well.
Or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which you are about to enter. So help you God.
Is it tape on the ground? In the middle? No.
It's okay, I won't bite. I'm gonna bite. Don't worry. Okay. Okay. Do you solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which you are about to enter. So help you God. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, sure.
Okay. That way just a little bit. There you go. Thank you so much. Ready? 1, 2, and 3. Hold it. Ready? 1, 2, and 3. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so if you missed that, I'm going to play that again.
It's okay, I won't bite. I'm gonna bite. Don't worry. Okay. Okay. Do you solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which you are about to enter. So help you God. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, sure.
Okay. That way just a little bit. There you go. Thank you so much. Ready? 1, 2, and 3. Hold it. Ready? 1, 2, and 3. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, so that was Professor Bruce Fisher at the he teaches at the University of Nebraska, Professor Bruce Fisher, who snubbed VP Kamala Harris, wouldn't even look her in the eye. Now, you have people on social media trying to make excuses. He's either a bigot or a sexist or both, most likely. And if we look at this article here from theindependent.co.uk, MAGA tries to defend Nebraska senator's husband after he refuses to shake hands with Harris. He had a cane. Now, he did have a cane in his right hand. He had the Bible in his left hand. But then there's a point where he puts his left hand in his pocket and is holding the cane with his right hand. So why didn't he change the hand that was holding the cane to shake VP Kamala Harris' hand? I bet you if that was Vice President J.D. Vance, I bet you he would shake J.D. Vance's hand. I bet you he would look him in the eye. So this is just blatant, downright disrespectful, shameful, disrespectful. He's being called a lot of things, and rightfully so. I want to go to this. Let's see, flip over to this article here. This is from The Independent. MAGA World tries to defend Nebraska senator's husband after he refuses to shake hands with Harris. He had a cane. VP Harris raised her eyebrows and shook off the snub with an uncomfortable smile. You saw that for a second. She had an uncomfortable smile, like, what's wrong with this guy? So when we look at this, so Republican Deb Fisher's husband, Bruce Fisher, was by her side while she was sworn in to her third term in the U.S. Senate by VP Harris on January 3rd, 2025. Okay, so we saw what happened when the vice president congratulated them both and extended her hand. Fisher's husband, who was holding a Bible in his left hand and a cane in his right hand, briefly glanced up at Harris and muttered, "Thank you." Okay, didn't appear that he even looked her in the eye. The senator took the Bible from him, freeing up his left hand, but instead he put it in his pocket and continued to look down. Harris raised her eyebrows and shook off the snub with an uncomfortable smile as the group posed for an awkward photo. Video of the snub has gone viral, with people noting the snub and Harris's reaction to being left hanging. And they have some screenshots here as well. So now you have MAGA coming to trying to defend this nonsense, okay? Saying he was holding a cane and things like this. Well, why didn't he put the cane in his other hand? His left hand was free and he put his left hand in his pocket. So this is just people behaving badly, white supremacist bigots, or whatever their problem is, who lack common decency. That's what you're dealing with here. And I wonder who Bruce Fisher voted for president. I don't think he voted for Kamala Harris. I would bet money he voted for Donald Trump. So read this piece also here. MAGA World tries to defend Nebraska senator's husband after he refuses to shake hands with the vice president. But we know MAGA is a death cult. MAGA is a cult, and it's a death cult. Because the difference between a cult and a religion is, in a religion, your savior dies for you, but in a cult, you're asked to die for your savior. In a cult, you're asked to die for your savior.